how do you navigate the delicate balance between this idea of being authentic as a leader, but also maintaining the authority needed to kind of guide your team effectively? I think that's something that a lot of leaders in our industry struggle with.
Yeah, I think I can tie like 80 or 90% of the things I have to deal with back to communication. And my fundamental belief is that all communication kind of has this three-legged stool, whether it's a business setting, whether it's, personal setting at home, but you need to be direct, you need to be honest, and you need to be respectful.
If you want to be a successful project manager in the architecture, engineering, and construction industry, you're going to need to be able to give feedback to your team members without being condescending or too negative. How do you do that? Well, in today's episode, I have with me Amelia Wehunt. She is a project manager, also a licensed professional engineer, and a group leader at Timmons Group. And Amelia is going to share some ways that you can remain authentic, be direct, be honest, but also be respectful to your team members, which will be a game changer for you in your career. But first, a word from our sponsor. Before we dive in, we'd like to recognize our sponsor for this episode, PPI, a leader in engineering exam prep for the FE and PE exams. PPI provides expert prep courses and study resources designed to help you pass the FE and PE exams the first time. PPI's live online courses include hours of lectures, problem-solving demonstrations, exam strategy sessions, office hours, and a passing guarantee. Check out PPI today at ppi2pass.com to see all the options available for FE and PE exam prep. Now let's dive into today's episode. All right, now I'd like to welcome our guest onto the show for today. Amelia Wehunt is a licensed professional engineer. She's also a principal and group leader at Timmons Group. Amelia, welcome to the AEC Project Management Podcast.
Thanks, Anthony. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. Why don't we start off, Amelia? Maybe you can tell our audience a little bit about yourself and kind of what led you up to the role that you play today at Timmons.
Yeah, well, it's a good story. It started about 17 years ago. I graduated engineering school from the University of Virginia, and originally from Virginia, grew up in Northern Virginia, wanted to stay in the state, but didn't necessarily want to go back to Northern Virginia, and found Timmons Group in Richmond and started a position doing residential work. Now, where it gets interesting, though, is this was right in 2007, before the Great Recession. And so I was one of the last kind of new grads hired for a while, but was able to make some lateral moves within the company to stay at Timmons during the recession and continue growing as an engineer and learning the practice, and have now found my way and settled into leading our urban group. And we focus on projects that are in the city of Richmond and surrounding communities that are they're mostly redevelopments or infill developments. So they're complex and they're interesting, and the utilities are old, and it's just a fun set of problems for us to solve. But I think what keeps me going each day is just getting to impact and walk by and drive by and see places that I've worked in the community over the years, and just consider how it's changed for the better, I think.
That's great. Yeah, that is awesome. I think that's a great part about being an engineer, is seeing the work that you're doing, impacting, the lives of others. Just a question, just like a follow-up on that. Was leadership something that you kind of always wanted to move towards in your career? Or was it something that evolved as you grew?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have always been interested in leadership and project management. Definitely, I love engineering, but even as I was deciding kind of which college to attend, in Virginia, we have for Virginia Tech, University of Virginia rivalry, and most of the people I work with went to Virginia Tech, and I considered going there myself. But what kind of drew me to UVA was I felt that I would be able to also get a business education and kind of round out my skills that way, because I've just always had that kind of entrepreneurial spirit, and love being an engineer, but love challenging myself and learning new things and being able to work in different parts of the profession, as opposed to, I just didn't see myself sitting and doing production for the next 4 years of my career.
Yeah. Well, I think that's great that you had some insights to that even at a young age, because I feel like not everyone does, nor, it's understandable, right? Not every kid who's a teenager is going to know maybe what they want to do for the rest of their lives, but at least you had enough of an inkling. So when you decided on what school to go to and kind of what programs to get enrolled in, you kind of felt like you could set yourself up for success in terms of where you wanted to go. And obviously that seems like that's come to fruition in terms of being in a technical world, but being in kind of a leadership role in a technical organization. So it sounds like that worked out.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. So how do you navigate the delicate balance between this idea of being authentic as a leader, but also maintaining the authority needed to kind of guide your team effectively? I think that's something that a lot of leaders in our industry struggle with.
Yeah, it's definitely been part of my personal journey, and I think I can tie like 80 or 90% of the things I have to deal with back to communication. And my fundamental belief is that all communication kind of has this three-legged stool, whether it's a business setting, whether it's, personal setting and home, but you need to be direct, you need to be honest, and you need to be respectful. And you can kind of hit it out of the park if you're doing all three, but you will come across as inauthentic, or maybe even dishonest if you're only getting 2 out of the 3. So anytime I'm even just on a daily basis crafting a response to someone, considering how to respond to a challenge I'm working through, I kind of use that three-legged stool, just sort of run, am I hitting on all these 3 things, so that folks know that I care about their problem, and that even if I have to say no or provide a boundary, that I'm doing that in a respectful way and that I'm being understood.
That's great. I think that's awesome. First of all, I love frameworks because I think it's easy for people to remember stuff. We do a lot of PM training and leadership development programs, and we try to put frameworks like that with acronyms to make it easier for people to remember and act on things. So I like the idea of being direct, honest, and respectful. And like you're saying, it's kind of a little measuring stick for you whenever you're engaged in communication. You can quickly kind of measure if you are those things. And then if you are, obviously, things hopefully will end up much better in terms of how that communication or how that conversation ends up. So I really like that. And, I think that it is a challenge for leaders because our team members need our honesty and they need our feedback. But, obviously we want to be sensitive to their feelings and their confidence really going forward. We don't want to put them in a position, right, where maybe knock down their confidence, which could help them to have to restart it, which could take some time. So I think that those are a good approach, a really good kind of framework, if you will, checklist. I know engineers like to use the term checklist, right, that you can go through when you're doing your communications.
That's right.
Because I think it is a balance. But I think if you are direct, honest, and respectful, it'll work. You can be honest with someone and tell them they need to improve, but you could do it in a respectful way, so that it's not coming off as highly negative. In fact, it's really positive for them because if they can improve in these couple of areas, they're going to be a much better project manager themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's great. That's awesome.
I think to expand on that thought even just a little further, really being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and consider how maybe you have felt vulnerable, or how I was corrected or did or didn't get feedback in a previous time when I was kind of in that employee's same position, and just really being able to meet people where they are to build and maintain real relationships with folks. I can remember just earlier today, we were working on an email response out to a client, and we were talking through it. And I said, oh, I need to check and make sure this attachment is right. And it reminded me of a time early in my career when I went into my boss's office. I just, fired off an email over, and he asked me, did you look at this attachment before you sent it to me? And I did not look at the attachment. And it, something had gone wrong in the PDF. And I just, at the time I was embarrassed, because I was like, oh, I should have done that. Not because this person made me feel that way, but it was a good lesson learned to, all right, yeah, I need to kind of take that extra step. And so those things stick with you. And I think, so this morning I was able to relate back to my employee, we're going to check this, because I remember one time when this happened to me and I felt embarrassed, and we were just able to kind of connect for a minute over that.
Yeah, that's great.
And so just being willing to be vulnerable with people and kind of share I've been where you are, and this is why we're going to do this. And I think that helps when you have to deliver feedback with your employees.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think really it's also a good example of learning lessons and not making the same mistake, which to me is a big part of project management, because every project manager, in my opinion, at the end of a project should kind of do a lessons learned. And, what went really well in this project? What didn't go so well? What can we change? So if you do make a mistake like the one that you explained to us here, you certainly don't want to make that mistake again. And you can put something in place, a quality control process or something in place to make sure that doesn't happen again. So I do think that is very related to project management, having a good kind of lessons learned process in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think normalizing feedback, and I will say specifically using the word feedback as something that can be good or bad, trying to just normalizing that into your vocabulary and normalizing that project debrief process, it allows more space for better communication to happen. So, if you feel like, oh, I just wish my employee would have done X, Y, or Z, and you want to be cautious, direct, honest, respectful with how you provide that feedback. But if it's already in the context of this project debrief process loop where, we frequently get together and talk about, well, how did this go? What did we do well? What do we want to do differently next time? You already have those communication lines open and established that you can give people feedback in a safe way, that they're not going to internalize that, oh, I'm bad. It's oh no, I just need to do that differently next time. And, it just maintains that kind of positive working relationship.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's really a great relationship builder too. That's great. So, you kind of mentioned the framework that you utilize, and it certainly has helped you in terms of staying authentic in your leadership style. How has it impacted your interactions with your clients?
I think it's been great for my interactions with clients. It's led to a lot of repeat business and then positive referrals for new business. Folks want to, work with me, work with Timmons Group, work with our team, because they know that we care about their projects as if they were their own and they're in our own community. And that's something that's really important to us. So I think being visible within the business community, being following up with folks and clients, again, maintaining authentic relationships positions you to get that repeat work and to do more routine business with people.
Yeah, and that's such an important thing in our industry. Most of the firms in the AEC industry are operating off of 80% or so repeat work. And so, maintaining those relationships, and I think being direct and honest and respectful with people is absolutely going to help you do that, which is a big positive. Now, in terms of project management, we get into a lot of different types of situations. And as a leader, we kind of need to sometimes adapt our style depending on the situation. So I'm just curious as to how you navigate different situations, different people, different project issues as a leader. Like, how are you able to flex and be adaptable in different types of situations?
Yeah, I think it starts with knowing yourself and always being open to learning about yourself and your own personal style. And then you can use that to build awareness that, okay, people might be different than that. And I think focusing on listening and then using the feedback that you get through project debriefs or, as you pick up data points, working with people over time to really understand what they need and how you can communicate to them in a way that they will understand and receive the message that you need. So I understand, certain clients need maybe a bottom line up front approach when communicating an email, like, hey, I need to discuss this issue with you, on Teams. Can you be available tomorrow? And then provide background at the bottom, as opposed to providing the background of what I need to talk about and then asking for the meeting at the end. Maybe they aren't going to make it to the end, but I still need to have it written down for later.
Yeah.
So it's really just being ready to provide sort of this adaptive management approach. You got to pick one thing, be confident and present that way. And then as you learn your project types, your clients, your reviewers, the different people that you're going to have to interact with throughout the course of a project, understanding what communication style you might need to drop into to be effective with that particular person or issue.
Yeah, and I think that this is a really important issue for project management in our world, because most of us as technical professionals are very rigid, are very analytical, are very left-brained. So the idea of quickly adapting to a lot of different things can be a little bit nerve-wracking. But I think, like you suggest, just getting used to it and understanding that there are different people and knowing what your work style is, your communication style is, and then trying to speak in other people's communication styles and not just push your work style on other people is going to make it much easier to adapt. It's kind of like the analogy I like to use when we do training on this type of stuff is, if you go to another country and they don't speak English, but you're speaking English to everyone, you're not going to get anywhere. But if you learn their language, right, and you started talking their language, now things start to open up for you. So it's the same thing in leadership. Is if you want to go around talking your language to everybody, you're only going to be able to accomplish so much. But if you have 5 team members and they all have a different communication style, and you're learning what each of them, how they communicate, and you can connect with each of them, you're obviously going to get much better results, but obviously requires more time and effort.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And as you practice, it gets easier. Should you have to, commit to that as your kind of your personal value system of, this is, I want to be better at this. Maybe I want to write more professional emails, or I want to be more confident in responding to, a telephone call coming in with a construction issue. Being willing to maybe identify areas where you feel like you can learn to communicate better, and then working to build confidence and practice in those areas. And I think feeling like, a lot of us, I've got a large team, 20 of us working together on a routine basis, and then, leveraging up to, a whole 1,000 folks that are in our firm. There's a lot of people that I work with that maybe have had to work through this particular problem before, or just being vulnerable, open, willing to, hey, can you read this email for me? Do you think there's a different way I could say this? Just not being afraid to ask for that second opinion can really help, I think, build that confidence.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it is. Leadership is about being adaptable, being able to change and flex. And it's just over time, you have to just kind of continuously try to get better and embrace that. So one of the things that's really important in project management is clear and consistent communication throughout the entire life cycle of a project, not just at the beginning, not just at the end, especially with so many stakeholders involved. So I'm wondering, when you manage projects or when you teach your team members how to effectively navigate projects, how do you ensure that you get that communication from kind of A to Z on a project timeline?
Yeah, no, I like that question. I think it's really about establishing and first understanding what that particular client needs in terms of an update timeline and what you need internally from a process perspective to make sure work is documented on an appropriate timeline, and then seeing how you can marry those two things up so that nothing falls through the cracks. So I know in a lot of your project management training, we talk about you need to have kickoff meetings. You need to set agendas for meetings. I think it's really sticking to the basics of running meetings well, following through on a schedule, and committing to those things and instilling that in your team members so that we all know and believe the same things about how items need to be documented, how certain types of issues need to be handled, and then talking about it, more communication. Just we can all buy into that, but if it's already a part of your normal discourse in how you're running projects, it's a lot easier to keep with the follow through.
Yeah, it's about setting up those good habits and templates and tools to support communication throughout your projects. And we do talk a lot about kickoff meetings when we do our PM learning and development programs. And I think the reason for that is, to me, like working with a lot of AEC firms, it's definitely like low-hanging fruit for improvement, because a lot of PMs either don't have a kickoff meeting or they don't have a good kickoff meeting. And that's really how you lay the groundwork for your project communication going forward. But then I think the next hurdle is some firms will do a really good kickoff meeting, but then the communication for the project kind of tails off. And I think that's where, kind of to your point, developing good habits and tools and processes to make sure that you continue, whether it's biweekly meetings or sending out weekly reports or whatever the case may be, is what's going to differentiate you from an average project manager to a really good project manager in an industry. And then I think, to take it one step further, within those communication efforts, you can lean back on, like we were talking about, speaking in people's work styles and communication styles on your project team and your client team once you've kind of figured out what those are. So I think there's a lot of good that can come out of a consistent communication, I guess is the way to say it. Start with a great kickoff meeting, but figure out how to carry that communication through your project. And obviously, the more direct, honest, respectful that it can be, I mean, you're really going to win. And kind of, I guess, along the same lines as that, because you mentioned kind of your team members, are going to be involved here. Talk to me a little bit about team development from your perspective. How do you approach that? What do you believe are some of the important factors in creating kind of a strong and cohesive team?
Yeah, I love our team. I can't say enough good things about our team. Several of us have worked together for more than 10 years now. And
wow.
I think that, balancing opportunities, understanding what your team members' goals are, and then doing everything you can to help set them up to be successful. I think that builds strong leaders at that kind of middle management, early project manager stage, and then making sure that they then have the support of younger staff and that we're training them to, train the trainer. So make sure they understand how to delegate, how to teach the younger engineers as they're coming in. I think having those kind of fundamental tools in place helps build the framework of the team, but then you can help, you can maintain retention and healthy working relationships by being authentic, being vulnerable, and communicating well. Because if you have authentic and real relationships, folks that are doing work that they're passionate about in their communities, and they like the people that they're working with, and we're able to learn new things and grow together, it just kind of hits on this what I think is the right mix of, both technical and, let's call them, social factors to keep the team running well.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think going back to like the first thing you said there around, Amelia, what are your career goals and how can I help you achieve them?
Yeah.
To me, that's such a great approach to leadership, because if my manager, supervisor, if they're looking to help me succeed in my career and my life, obviously I'm going to build a good relationship with them, and I'm going to appreciate that. I'm going to respect them for that. And I'm going to want to work with them and for them. So I think that sometimes that's underrated and people don't think about that enough. It's not just about helping them to be really successful in their job, but it's understanding what they want to do really in their career and in their life, and kind of supporting that. And I think people sometimes fail to realize the impact that you can have as a leader on the people that you're leading on your team outside of work.
Yeah.
Because they spend so much time with you, period.
Right.
Basically.
That's absolutely right.
So the next step on that then is helping your team members build their own leadership skills. So what advice can you offer around, you certainly want to help your team grow and you want to help them develop into the leaders that they want to be. What advice would you offer on that?
So I tell folks to take in as much leadership and what I'll call like soft skills training as they possibly can. All of our folks went to engineering school. They have engineering degrees. They have the technical skills. Yes, there's some on-the-job things that you need to learn, and we can teach those, and that's great. But soft skills and communication are not taught extensively as a part of the engineering curriculum. And maybe, some folks that comes very naturally to. Some folks, really get into being a technical expert, and maybe they're less inclined to that. So I think even as a, first and second year engineer, just because some things said leadership training didn't make me think like, oh, that's not for me. I've tried to make it a regular part of my own self-growth and self-development to even now attend leadership trainings and listen to podcasts and read books. And, one thing, it may sound cliche, but I will just put in a plug for reading in general. I used to go to maybe different leadership talks. Someone would have a book. I would usually get the book. I would not read the book, even though like with the best of intentions.
Right.
But then I discovered Audible, and being able to listen to books has just opened up a whole new, way of learning for me. And so even, you can always pick up a tidbit and apply that to some situation that you're dealing with, or see, how another person, maybe in a biography, handled a certain historical event, and then try to contextualize that back to different situations you're seeing. You can really, I think, understand a lot about yourself and the world around you by reading and taking in and learning as much soft skill information as you can.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's reading to me is really everything. I actually read Mark Cuban's book, and he said in his book that books themselves are such a great investment. You could pay $10 for a book, and if you pick up one like life-changing strategy, it's worth about 1 million times what you're paying for the book, right?
Absolutely.
So as long as you're willing to put in the work and listen to it or read it or whatever the case may be. But I think also, the point that you're making about investing in yourself and developing yourself with these skill sets, to me, it's so valuable because these are skill sets that are going to go with you for your whole life, right?
That's
beyond
right.
your specific job, beyond your specific role today. They're going to help you as a parent. They're going to help you as an engineer. They're going to help you as a project manager. So if you're reading leadership books and building your leadership skills, it's really going to show through for you in every aspect of your life. So it's an investment in yourself that, is not going to go bad. That's for sure.
That's right. And like you're saying, it will continue to pay dividends. So sure, I've been to talks where, maybe I only wrote down a sentence or two, but I think you can always find something to take away that you might want to try to do or to not do. If it was a bad talk, you can always be learning and in that growth mindset.
Absolutely. Any last piece of advice that you'll share just for project managers that really want to be the most authentic leader they can be?
Yeah, I think to be open to feedback. Again, we hear feedback as a potentially negative connotation, but you can train yourself to think of it as something neutral. It's just feedback. It's new information to help you move forward differently or in the same way. And then to also be kind to yourself. A lot of times we can be our own worst critics. And I think if you can start to separate yourself from maybe something foolish that you did or something that you would want to do differently if you had another time around, I think if you can just take a step back and again, take that in as feedback. Like, okay, like this happened. That's not ideal, but I can be different. I can do this differently next time. And that's okay. That doesn't change who I am as a person. I think that those are my best two pieces of advice.
No, that's great. And I really like that. In fact, you could probably even reframe the idea of feedback into an opportunity for yourself for growth.
Absolutely.
Because, if you can take that feedback and make a change that's going to impact you and your team members going forward, again, it's like that return on investment can be so big there when you're investing in yourself. So that's great. All right. So a lot of great advice there from Amelia. We're going to take a break real quick, and then we're going to come back and finish off with our PM pitfall. All right, I am back with our guest. Amelia Wehunt is a licensed professional engineer and principal and group leader at Timmons Group. All right, so Amelia, I got one more question for you to close this one out. What is the biggest PM pitfall that you've identified, and how would you recommend that PMs can either avoid it or overcome it?
Yeah, that's a great one. I think as I consider my own journey, the thing that I wish I had done sooner, I wish I had learned and really leaned into delegating sooner than I did as I kind of grew through the PM to now being a group leader. And I think that everyone's journey to overcome this is a little different, but really leaning into what we've been talking about here is I think the more you can become confident in and know yourself, the easier it is to start to let go of some of the items that you used to be fully in control of. So I think learning about why it's important to delegate, learning and thinking about what barriers, why am I wanting to hold on to doing this task, and helping yourself kind of sort through what I need to keep and what opportunities I need to give to my staff for them to keep learning so that I can focus on, what my new goals are as a group leader, as a project manager, whatever the case may be. I think that's a really important skill and something that's really worth reading up on and listening to different podcasts about. I'm sure you've got some great delegation podcasts.
Yeah, we've got some podcasts on that, and we've actually got a whole session on that because to Amelia's point, I think that that's probably one of the biggest challenges for technical project managers is the ability to delegate and let go of work and give it to someone else. We're kind of get trapped in this mindset of being a doer, and it's quicker and easier if we just do it ourselves. And the problem with that mindset is it's good if you're only going to have to do something once or twice, but on a lot of our projects, we're doing the same things over and over. And it's like the name of that book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There.
Right.
If you want to keep growing your career, you can't keep doing the same things. It just fundamentally doesn't work out, because when you take a new position, you're going to have new responsibilities. You can't do the old responsibilities and the new responsibilities. So I think that that's a great piece of advice. And I think Amelia's advice for dealing with it is great too. You have to learn to trust other people, and you have to learn to let go. And those things take some time. But to me, one way you can do this is if you think about what you would be able to accomplish if you let go of some of those tasks. Sometimes that will unlock you a little bit and say, I could be doing more business development. I could be developing my people more. I could be talking to clients more if I could delegate some of these other tasks. So I think that's one way that you can maybe give yourself a push.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that, it's also an opportunity to be vulnerable with your team and say, hey, right. I am wanting to get better at delegating, and give me feedback if you feel like there are more things I can be giving you to do, if there are more things that you would like to do. It's an opportunity to have that open conversation. It's important for your manager to understand your goals, but I think, it's also important for those that report to you to understand your goals as well. And I think the more that we can be open about communicating these things that you maybe would have otherwise thought as being personal, that can really start to break down some barriers and help you move forward.
Yeah, I think you want your people to know that you're a human being too, just like them, and you've got strengths and weaknesses, and that'll make for a better relationship overall. So, Amelia, well, you gave us some great information today. I want to just thank you so much for spending some time with us here on the AEC Project Management Podcast. Thank you, Amelia.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Amelia. It is a real critical thing to be able to give people the right type of feedback in the best way that they can receive it and use it. And I hope that she gave you some advice that you can take and use immediately. If you enjoyed the conversation, please subscribe to our channel here. We do put out videos like this on a weekly basis to help engineers become better managers and leaders. I'll see you next week.